Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of Discography Discussions. On this episode, Edmonton-born singer, songwriter, and self-producer Mac Demarco.
We will be discussing the discography, so all the albums released by Mac Demarco, as well as his live performances, persona, and anything else we want to talk about in the world of Macintosh Demarco. So naturally, I think we should just start off with his first album. He did have a few songs released with a band he did before his solo efforts called Makeout Videotape, but we're not too familiar with that, so we're going to skip over that for now. So I think we should just get right in and talk about his first release, which is Rock and Roll Nightclub, which was released in 2012.
Definitely an opening to the strange world of Mac Demarco. You know, indie fans got a pretty nice awakening here with this album. They saw a little bit of Mac's weirder side, which we obviously always get a little bit on all of his albums.
I definitely say it's the weirdest Mac release.
Yes.
If you listen to this album in full, the album flows like a radio broadcast.
Yeah.
Where there's a few tracks in the middle that are like station ID, radio station IDs.
Mm-hmm.
So this album technically doesn't actually count as a full album, as half the tracks are not songs. But most people include it in his discography of LPs. Opens up with the title track Rock and Roll Nightclub, which is a very strange song.
Yeah.
And it's different from the stuff that he did afterwards, speaking of that song in the entire album. But it was an introduction. And he did make this album essentially as a joke. Wasn't really meant to be a widespread release, but it got a lot of attention. People really liked it. And I think after this, he decided to take his songwriting a little bit more seriously and make more legitimate music.
I think this was the album that made him realize that he could reach a lot of people with his kind of, unique storytelling, which he's talked about in interviews before. He said that, the money, the fame, it's not really what motivates him. It's just that he's able to get emotional reactions out of people with his music and just generally affect people. And I think this was he kind of went into it with this jovial attitude, but it ended up being something that he was like, oh, okay, wow, people really like this. I can go somewhere with this.
Yeah, and he went more of a serious lyrical theme following this album. He's got songs out here about wearing blue jeans, being at this rock and roll nightclub, this imaginary place. A couple more legitimate songs like When We're Here to Cry. But it is a bit of a goofy album and very experimental.
Yes.
And has the harshest production of any of his albums.
Yeah.
Still really good, but definitely a classic first album. But not too much to say. So I think we'll just move right on over to 2, which is the album that followed Rock and Roll Nightclub. Came out shortly afterwards, and that was his first real serious album, and this is the album that kind of launched his fame in the indie world.
There's so many huge singles on this album and a lot of great songs, and I've always, listened to those songs and really appreciated them, but I think since his newer stuff has come out, I've just been listening to this album so much more, and I just have this newfound appreciation for it. And it just has so many good tracks, and I think it just flows really well. And it was the first time that we heard a consistent sound of Mac Demarco. This was the first album that we got that kind of twangy, just melodic, surfy, riffs. And that was just kind of a consistent through all the tracks. And it was because this was the first real time that he did that, it was still very fresh.
Yeah.
And it was totally unique compared to other artists in the genre.
Yeah, he basically took the sound that he kind of brought up on Rock and Roll Nightclub and cleaned it up a little bit.
Yeah.
And made, as I said, more thought out songs. It's got a lot of wacky, kind of jangly, silly songs like Cooking Up Something Good and Freaking Out the Neighborhood.
Love Freaking Out the Neighborhood.
That's a classic,
track.
and it's got that classic Mac riff. That's definitely one of the songs that you'd want to show to somebody if you were gonna show them the flavor of Mac.
Exactly.
And you've got Ode to Viceroy, which is his first big song that he's still known for to this day.
Yeah.
Really established his smoker image.
Yeah, I was gonna say about that track and just other tracks on this album was that the themes were very. He wasn't trying to be anybody else, he didn't make a song about like, oh, I need to quit smoking and this is one of my struggles. Like the song was literally about like, don't ever tell me to quit smoking because I'm not going to stop.
Yeah.
Like, that's like what the lyrics are about. So he was like kind of establishing like not even just a bad boy reputation, but just like, you know, I'm doing my own thing and like what I care about is music and like these other things aren't going to affect me.
And it also shows another example of his kind of not really ironic, but kind of sarcastic side where he's singing an ode to Viceroy, which is known as one of the worst cigarettes.
Yeah.
And so we thought it'd be funny to sing about how delectable and how wonderful this cheap garbage cigarette is.
Yeah.
And I actually heard an interview of him talking where he mentioned how a fan went up to him and said, I got Viceroys. I got those fine organic cigarettes that you sing about. And people don't get that the cigarettes are horrible and it's actually a joke.
Yeah.
Like he does smoke, but he does not smoke Viceroys. I've actually found out he smokes. Actually, I don't remember what he smokes, but it's not Viceroys.
Yeah.
And I will quickly say that No Responsibilities does not endorse cigarettes in any way. Neither of us smoke, ever have, or ever will, for the most part.
Although if you do smoke, that's fine.
If you do, that's perfectly fine. But we're not telling you to do it. Lastly, his biggest song to this date is also on this album, My Kind of Woman. That's his biggest song by far. A lot of people's favorites.
I mean, it's that perfect, you know, slower track that just has all of the elements to be like your biggest song, you know?
Mm-hmm. And the melody is just one of his best melodies, I'd say.
Incredible. And
it's a very good introduction track, I'd say, to his music because it's not too out there. It's not too, you know, I think this song has a lot of appeal.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, man. It's a good tune.
And for me, like, this album was like the album that kind of made Mac Demarco that artist in this generation that is like defining a whole like movement of music, you know? Mm-hmm. Like you had like Bob Dylan with like the singer-songwriter in like the 60s and like when he was breaking out with his actual self-written albums, not his cover albums. It was like, you know, people could just tell right away that it was something special and he inspired so many other artists. And I think Mac Demarco with Two was like, this was his first like, you know, his coming out party. Like this was like people started to like really realize that he was something special. Yeah,
I mean, he's one of the few artists that have come up in the last, you know, 10 years that have really brought up something totally new.
Yeah.
And of course he has his influences in like 70s rock, classic rock. There's influences there. He didn't totally invent his sound, and there is some stuff out there that sounded like him in the past, but for the most part, I can't point to anybody that sounded like him before him.
Yeah.
Since then, there's been a ton of rip-offs.
Yeah.
But yeah, very unique. A couple lesser memorable songs on this album, like Bo's Zash, Shrill.
Yeah.
So it's not great all the way through, but definitely a very good second album.
I actually do really like the song Dreaming, though.
Yeah.
I've always enjoyed listening to that after cooking up something good. I think it's a good, like, middle ground between Freaking Out the Neighborhood. You know, it's a good
this album flows very well.
Break. Yeah.
So we'll move on to Salad Days, which is 2014. This is 2 years after Two. Mm-hmm. And this is the album that definitely launched him into the fame that he has now.
Yeah.
Two definitely gave him a big boost, but this is his...
I think Two was, like, his what people noticed him in kind of the indie music community and just that kind of circle. And then Salad Days is what brought him out to everybody.
Yeah. Like, and this is the album that showed that he had some staying power and that he was going to be able to constantly release quality music. It wasn't it's not a flash in the pan.
Like, I don't think you could follow up Two with a better album. Like, Salad Days was it's really good. I think it's as good as Two. And it has a crazy amount of like well-known singles that are always requested at live shows. You know, Chamber of Reflection is obviously huge. Let Her Go and Salad Days, of course. Blue Boy. Like, these are all tracks that
Passing Out Pieces,
yeah.
This is the album of the classics.
Yeah, definitely a classic. And I mean, he did stick with the way he structures his melodies and the riffs and that same type of wavy sound. But to me, like on Salad Days, he went way more dreamy with it. You know, like everything was super echoey.
Yeah, he moved a little bit away from the twangy Telecaster guitar stuff. He still has that on here, but there's a lot less of it. And yeah, more dreamy, more reverb,
Yeah.
as well as more usage of other instruments like the synths on Chamber of Reflection, for example. Then you have good acoustic songs like Let Her Go is acoustic, right?
Yes.
Yeah, I can't remember. But yeah, so this definitely broadens his music a little bit. And just another great addition to his music.
No, it's Let My Baby Stay that's acoustic.
Right.
Yeah.
Correction. Yeah, just another classic. I think this is going to be this is going to be his album that people will always go back to. This is definitely the album that I would recommend a new fan listens to for the first time.
100%, yeah. And it's also the album, I think, that proved he was a really good producer by himself. You know? Like, because he added those other elements in, like, the synths, and that, you know, songs with those elements on this album turned out to be some of the best songs on the album. You know, like, he doesn't just have a knowledge of, like, basic singer-songwriter structure, like how to, you know, edit this, edit that. Like, he can put it together really nicely.
Yep. And this album, all his albums up until This Old Dog were done up on tape, and you can definitely tell. Moving on to another one, which was released shortly after Solid Days in 2015. This album kept up the sound of the first three albums.
Yes.
Varying it up a little bit. This album was even cleaner in terms of production a little bit. But for the most part, same sound.
Yeah. I haven't listened to this album as much as his other albums, but from what I have heard of it, I will say that based on the frequency of when it came out and the length of it, it did feel to me that he might have just been taking songs that didn't make the cut for Salad Days.
I think this was definitely a kind of a goodbye to that era.
Yeah.
Kind of like getting out the rest of what he had.
Yeah, because he didn't want to let those songs go to waste.
Yeah, I think that's what it was. And not probably his worst album up until that point. Don't get me wrong, great album, but it wasn't as good as the first three.
Yeah.
You know, has The Way You'd Love Her in another one. Very well-liked songs.
Yes.
A few more forgettable songs. Also, I love how at the end of My House by the Water, he states his address and invites fans to visit him. And many did.
And he had to move.
He did have to move. I don't know what he was thinking.
I mean, yeah. He's always done wacky stuff like that at the end of songs. I mean, he has funny stuff on Salad Days. He's got that thing on another one. He even has a few things on. Not sure if it made the cut for This Old Dog, but it's on the demos. So yeah, generally he just likes to do silly stuff like that. You know what? Now that you mentioned that, I wonder if people still go to that house, you know, not knowing that he moved. I wonder if the new people that live there.
Oh, that'd be horrible to live there.
Yeah.
I'd like drive by and go, hey, that's cool. Mac Demarco used to live there, but
yeah.
But I know I've heard a few stories of people who did go and he actually had tea with them or whatever, and they hung out in the backyard and things like that, which I think would have been fun for him and the fans.
Yeah.
But yeah, I can see how for a while it would be annoying.
Yeah.
And I think I saw a different interview with him actually where he talked about times where fans were showing up at really bad times, like in the middle of the night, and or times where too many people would show up, and that would just be awful. Like sometimes you want to go home and just be alone.
Yeah.
Lip smack noise. 2 years after that, he releases This Old Dog, a refresh in Mac Demarco's sound.
Yes. Definitely a album that I have a lot of mixed feelings about, but I don't want to say they're bad mixed feelings, if that makes any sense. Like, I really like the album. Like, some days I'm like, wow, I really like this album. And then other days I'm like, I can kind of take it or leave it. Because, like, I like the new production elements that he puts in on this album. But at the same time, part of me is like wishing that I could hear a bit more of the old sound. And I think that's why I actually like the demos of this album a lot more than the actual album. Like, I got the vinyl Old Dog demos on Record Store Day. I think that was 2 years ago. And I listened to that all the time. And I really liked stripped back versions of all these songs. And after listening to that so much and then listening to the real album, I would have almost liked him to go more acoustic with it.
Yep. I really did like this album. I liked that he changed his sound.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it would have gotten old if he continued that same thing for a fourth album.
Yeah, which is why I have mixed feelings because like
Yeah.
I like that he was being experimental.
That's the thing. Like you want him to change, but also you do like his earlier thing the most. My Old Man and This Old Dog. Those are the two singles off this album. I don't like those two. I never listen to them.
I don't mind This Old Dog, but it's definitely not my favorite song in the album.
The ones I really liked were One Another, Still Beating, Dreams from Yesterday, A Wolf Who Wears Sheep's Clothes. I love On the Level. A lot of people hate that song, but I love it.
My favorite songs are Dreams from Yesterday, Baby You're Out, A Wolf Who Wears Sheep's Clothes. Really like that song. Yeah, I didn't mind On the Level. I thought it was a good track.
No, I wish he would have gone. I want him to do more of the synthy stuff.
Yeah.
Like that kind of like dreamy shopping mall elevator music.
Yeah. I think he's
stuff,
really
like
good
On
at
the
it
Level.
whenever he does that.
Well, yeah, and he's only done it on the Level, Chamber of Reflection, and one more, I think. So I really loved it. I like most of this album. I don't know. I mean, not as good as the early stuff. Doesn't as much have that classic Mac sound, but it still has the same feeling.
Yeah.
That same kind of nostalgic, aura of Mac.
I'm thinking just thinking about it now, I almost feel like if you took all of these tracks or most of these tracks and you like sprinkled them onto other albums, it would almost make, other albums a lot better. Because I feel like a lot of these songs are really good and unique, but they would almost be better if they were mixed in with more of his older sound. Because I feel like when it's just all newer sounding stuff, maybe it to me it sounded a bit like, okay, like wow, he's like really committing to this. But I don't know, that's a crazy thought. I don't know if that makes sense at all.
Yeah. So this album definitely divided the fans. I know a lot of people don't like it. A lot of people love it. But I'm happy with it.
Yeah, I actually like it.
I think it's a good album. It's just because the earlier stuff was so good, and I said this in our review of his newest album. Because his earlier stuff was so good, you're holding it up to a really high regard.
Exactly.
If this album came out on its own,
I would.
I'd love it. You got to stop comparing it. You just got to think of it as an album.
It's hard. It's hard to think of things in a vacuum. Like if you're right. If this came out by itself, I would amazing. But it's like, you just think about two and Salad Days, and you're like, oh man, like it's hard.
That's a hard thing for an artist is to live up to your previous work.
And I think critics, like, they're too harsh sometimes.
Yep.
Like, even it's a challenge reviewing music. Like we've talked about this. It's like a challenge trying to put previous thoughts aside,
Yep.
and just singling out the project.
So that followed with his latest release, Here Comes the Cowboy, which came out a few months ago.
Now, we have reviewed this album in a full-length video on our channel, which you can check out. So we've talked about it quite extensively.
Yeah, and I'll quickly say our Here Comes the Cowboy review quickly became our most viewed review. So people really enjoyed that, and we thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys for showing that video so much attention and love. We really appreciate it, and it inspires us to make a lot more content.
Yeah, so if you want to hear us go really in-depth on this and have our first take on this album, you can watch that video. But we'll talk about it a little bit more here.
The general consensus was we thought there were some decent songs on it, but it suffered from too much repetition. Yeah, not enough variety. It was kind of almost a little lazy, a little slow.
Yeah. Didn't
have the same punch that he usually has. It just seemed like the album was kind of falling out. But that being said, like there were still things that were pretty enjoyable to listen to, and we ended up I think at the end of the video we ended up giving it maybe like a 60 something or 70. Can't exactly remember.
Yeah. Yeah, it was just slow, and it just had too many of the same type of song. And also the melodies were just a little bit, they just didn't grip me like they would in his previous stuff. And since it's been released, I haven't gone back to it. Honestly, I listened to it for about 2 weeks, and I haven't been going back.
Yeah, I haven't either.
I will say, though, that the song All of Our Yesterdays, if you watch the live version on Jimmy Fallon, it's so much better than that one on the album.
Yeah.
Okay, we both keep going. We have to stop. I don't know why people do that.
Yeah.
but we keep doing it. Sorry, everybody. Anyway, yeah. So Mac does a great solo at the end of that version of All Our Yesterdays, and it's so much better. And I wish he would have done that on the album.
Definitely one of the better songs on the album. I really enjoyed Baby Bye Bye, All of Our Yesterdays. People didn't really like Choo Choo, but I thought it was kind of funny.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something you're gonna want to listen to.
Yeah,
100 times over, but it's a fun song, and I like it.
Yeah.
It's classic Silly Mac.
Mm-hmm.
Silly Mac fun cheese.
Yeah. A lot of our album reviews, I think, are quite raw first thoughts because we release them fairly quickly to when the album's released. So that being said, I think going back, if I were to re-review this, I might actually give it a bit lower of a score because I think
I would too.
Listening to it more, I kind of realize it's not as its good elements don't make up enough for the bad elements, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, that's a tough thing about music reviewing is the way you're going to feel about an album the first days of its release is not going to be the same as what you think of it later.
Yeah.
You're either going to realize it's not as good as you thought, or you like it more than what you said.
Yeah, but you got to stick by, what you said. I feel like that's once you start doubting yourself, then it's just harder to make content.
Yeah, and lyrically on that album, it's definitely his most sad. Very sad. Mac is a sad man right now.
Yeah.
His live performances, though, have been crazy good. I've been
Yes.
watching a few on YouTube, his 2019 shows, and he is performing better than ever. And I would love for him to come to Calgary.
It's almost like depression makes you more of a heartfelt and interesting artist. Kurt Cobain.
Well, depression is part of being a open human being.
Yeah.
A sensitive, woke human.
No, I'm obviously joking. You do not need to be depressed to be an interesting artist. However, it is.
But I mean, when you're miserable and feeling all these different feelings, you got a lot to sing about.
You do have a lot to sing about. It does make for some good music most of the time. Before, I actually was also going to mention that maybe part of the reason why he's feeling this way and why this album was a little different was that he has been feeling very overwhelmed by the fame. And he has said multiple times that he doesn't really want it. Well, not doesn't want it, but he is very taken back by it and kind of confused by it. And it's kind of a lot of pressure.
Yeah, I mean, there's lyrics on the album where he talks about, I was it Nobody or was it Finally Alone? I think it's the song Nobody. He talks about how once you're famous, and you can't get out of it. That's it. That's
you
your
can't
life.
go back if you wanted to.
Yeah, you can't ever be nobody again.
Yeah.
And everyone who's not famous wants to be famous. But you never think about that a lot of famous people don't want to be.
Yeah, it's
and
weird.
You really give up a normal life.
Yeah.
And maybe a normal life is better than the famous life.
Yeah. And it's strange because everyone's always like, oh, I wish I could be that, or I wish I could, be famous. But it's a big change, and it's not necessarily a good thing. I mean, think about how many hugely famous people have immense problems because they're constantly being followed. They don't have privacy. It's hard to, even relationships wise, it's hard to meet normal people, that's why so many celebrities end up dating other celebrities. Cause how common is it that you're at some, random club in a city and, oh, there's, Ryan Gosling, he can't just go out and try and meet somebody, cause people would just mob him. So it's, your whole outlook on life and people changes.
Yeah. I also think he's just struggling with the expectations of keeping up his persona and the way that people seem to be, because he's totally been turned into this character. And I think he feels like he has to be that way all the time.
Yeah.
As well as, I think any artist has this pressure. You want to make music that your fans like, and that's as good as your early stuff. Back when we were in a band, I always had to prove to myself that I can write as good as I always had.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's Mac for you. Mackie boy.
That's Mac.
MacBook Pro.
Yeah, but like you were saying about the live performances, always amazing. I want to see him live so bad.
He's from Edmonton, which is about 2 hours north of Calgary, where we're from. Why does he never play here?
I know.
You're from here.
It's your hometown.
Play for your people. We
Come to
built you.
Edmonton.
Alberta built you, Mac.
Come to Calgary. Come to Edmonton.
Yeah, come anywhere where I can go.
Yeah, we're your beginning. You know.
Yeah.
Gotta come up here.
I mean, people in our scene know him.
Yeah.
From when he was, in his underground band before he came up.
I've legitimately met and talked to people that have worked with him.
Yeah, like he's very tightly knit.
Yeah.
Let's see you play.
Would love it.
So we implore you to tweet Mac. Come to Calgary, please.
Yeah.
Please.
Or Edmonton. Come
And
to Calgary,
I'll drive up
Edmonton.
there.
Yeah, it's
Go
2
to
hours. I would go
anywhere.
there for a concert any day.
Yeah. So that's Mac for you.
That's
So
Mac.
we think that was a quick view over his discography and what we think of him.
Just a brief discussion of some of his albums, our thoughts on him as an artist. And we didn't talk too much about what we'd like to see from him in the future, but we can definitely make another video on that if you guys would like.
Or we could do it now. What do you want to see from him in the future?
Yeah,
we may as well.
let's
Quickly,
do it now.
what do you want for the next album, the 2021 album?
Well, what I would like is, I think Mac Demarco is the type of artist that by the end of his career, he's going to have a ton of music. There's some artists that release, like one album here, one album there, and by the end of their career, they have 6 albums. But I think Mac Demarco is the type of guy that music is his life. He's always writing. It's not just like his it's not just his passion. Like writing and songwriting is like in his world. And so I think he's going to be always making tons of music. So I don't think Here Comes the Cowboy is like, that's our one album that we're going to get for 5 years. We have to be good with it. No, I think he's going to release something probably next year or 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would just not necessarily back to old form, but maybe just something a bit on the safer side, just still experimental, but not in the same direction of Here Comes the Cowboy. Like going back to the same vein as This Old Dog,
Well, I thought Here Comes the Cowboy was the same vein as This Old Dog. The songs just weren't as good.
Yeah.
Like it's the same kind of thing. I think it is a continuation. I mean, it's mostly acoustic. It's got the same drum beats.
Oh yeah, I guess you're right.
All that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah, you're right. Well, okay, then in that case, I guess
I want a different direction that isn't this one.
That's what I meant. Like a different direction.
I don't want Solid Days Again. I just want I don't know where he'd go, like more synthy or bring in some electric guitar or
a different experimental direction. I don't think it has to be groundbreaking. I just want like a solid album, and then maybe after that something really punchy, like something really like whoa.
Yeah,
wow,
you could experiment with different guitar pedals, like electric distortion. Bring that in. Like there's a lot of ways he could go.
I think you should take some time, go talk to people, like learn something. I'm not sitting here like, oh, you need to learn about whatever. I think it's good for artists to like
go spend a year in India.
Yeah, take a break, go talk to like other artists, like get some inspiration, and then come back and make something that like is born out of that like adventure.
But I just love the whole world of Mac. Mm-hmm. Just the feeling you get from his music, just that whole thing, like it's hard to explain, but everyone knows what it is.
Even just watching him talk, like watching like some like little like vlogs that are on YouTube of him, like Mac Demarco a day in
it's as much about
records or whatever, where he like goes and picks like some records and he talks about it. Like
it's as much about his personality and him than it is about his music.
It's like really rich personality and like he's just a really funny guy.
Yeah. I'm sure everyone can agree, but I wish I was his friend.
Yeah.
Like I would replace you with him right away.
Thanks, Connor.
Anyway, right. I think we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, we're going to wrap it up.
If you guys would like us to go more in depth on any of his albums, we could do a track by track podcast. We could talk about anything in the world of Mac or any other artist.
Yes, let us know what other artists you want us to see a discography. No, wait, what is this series called? Discography discussion. Yeah, whatever you want to see a discography discussion on,
or whatever. Just leave a comment.
Yeah,
we don't care what it is.
Yeah, start a discussion in the comments. Let's talk.
Yeah, we'll reply.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed. I'm Connor J. Finley's Zone. This is
Jacob Martens.
Absolutely. We're your hosts. Thank you for watching No Responsibilities. Go fuck yourselves.
Woo!
Just kidding. We love you.